What happens when Hollywood's most respected gentleman sits down with television's most arrogant host? It only took 37 seconds for Piers Morgan to make the comment that would turn a simple interview into the most shocking television meltdown in talk show history. The lights were bright in the London studio that evening. George Clooney walked onto the set looking like he always did, calm, collected, wearing that familiar smile that had charmed audiences for decades. He shook hands with Piers Morgan, settled into the guest chair, and adjusted his jacket with the ease of someone who had done this dance 1,000 times before. The cameras rolled, the audience applauded, and everything seemed perfectly normal. But from the very first question, something felt off. Morgan leaned back in his chair with that smug expression he was known for, the one that said he thought he was the smartest person in the room. His opening line should have been a simple welcome, maybe a comment about Clooney's latest film or his humanitarian work. Instead, what came out of his mouth was something else entirely. George, Morgan said, shaking his head like a disappointed parent. You know, I've been watching your career for years now, and I have to ask, when did you become so political? I mean, really? When did the pretty boy from ER decide he knew better than everyone else about world affairs? The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the warm introduction they expected. Clooney's smile faltered for just a moment, but he recovered quickly. He had dealt with difficult interviewers before, but there was something particularly nasty in Morgan's tone that caught him off guard. Well, Piers, Clooney replied, his voice steady and measured, I think caring about what happens in the world is something we should all do. I've been fortunate enough to have a platform, and I try to use it responsibly. Morgan waved his hand dismissively, like he was swatting away a fly. Responsibly? Is that what you call it? Because from where I sit, it looks like virtue signaling. All this running around to Sudan, talking about human rights, hosting fundraisers, it's all very convenient for your image, isn't it? The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Clooney's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained calm. I'm not sure what you're suggesting, Piers, but I can assure you that my work with the Clooney Foundation isn't about image. It's about trying to help people who don't have a voice. Oh, please, Morgan scoffed, leaning forward with that predatory gleam in his eyes. Don't give me the St. George routine. You live in a $15 million mansion. You fly private jets everywhere, and you lecture the rest of us about inequality. The hypocrisy is staggering. This was where most celebrities would have started to squirm, where they would have tried to laugh it off or change the subject. But Clooney wasn't most celebrities. He had been around long enough to know when someone was trying to bait him, and he wasn't about to take it lying down. Piers, I'm happy to talk about my work, my films, or even my personal life within reason, but I'm not going to sit here and be lectured about hypocrisy by someone who makes a living tearing other people down. The audience murmured. This was getting uncomfortable fast. Morgan's face flushed slightly, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. Tearing people down? I'm a journalist, George. I ask the tough questions that other people are too afraid to ask. That's what real journalism looks like. Not everyone can afford to play pretend for a living. Play pretend? Clooney repeated, his voice getting a little sharper. Is that what you think acting is? Because I'm pretty sure it requires more skill than sitting in a chair and insulting your guests. Morgan's laugh was harsh and bitter. Oh, that's rich, coming from someone who peaked with a medical drama 20 years ago. Tell me, George, when was the last time you were in a film that actually mattered? When was the last time anyone under 30 knew who you were? The insult landed like a slap. The studio audience was completely silent now, sensing that this had gone way beyond normal interview banter. This was personal, and it was ugly. Clooney stared at Morgan for a long moment, and you could see him making a decision. He could either let this slide and try to salvage what was left of the interview, or he could fight back. He chose to fight back. You know what, Piers? I came here tonight because I was told this would be a conversation about my new film and my foundation's work. I was told you were a professional. But what I'm seeing is someone who's more interested in creating drama than having an actual discussion. Is this really what your show has become? Personal attacks and cheap shots? Morgan's eyes lit up. This was exactly what he wanted. Conflict, drama, something that would get people talking on social media. I'm just asking the questions that your fans want answered, George. The questions about whether Hollywood's golden boy is as golden as he pretends to be. My fans? Clooney's voice was incredulous. Or your audience? Because there's a difference between asking tough questions and just being cruel for entertainment. Cruel? Morgan practically shrieked. Cruel is lecturing working-class people about their carbon footprint while you own multiple homes around the world. Cruel is pretending to care about refugees while you live in a gated community. Don't talk to me about cruel. The attack was vicious and personal, and it was clear that Morgan had prepared these talking points specifically to provoke Clooney. But if he thought the actor would crumble under the pressure, he had seriously miscalculated. Instead of getting defensive, Clooney got calm. Dangerously calm. "Piers, I think we need to clear something up here. My work with refugees isn't pretend. I've spent months in camps. I've met with displaced families. I've seen children who have lost everything. And you know what I learned? That compassion isn't about how much money you have or where you live. It's about giving a damn about other human beings. Something you might want to try sometime." The comeback was surgical in its precision, and you could see it hit Morgan like a physical blow. His face went red, and for a moment, he seemed genuinely speechless. But instead of taking the hint and moving on, he made the mistake that would define the rest of the interview. "Oh, that's touching, George. Really touching," Morgan said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "But let's talk about your wife for a minute, shall we? Amal Clooney, brilliant lawyer, human rights advocate. Tell me, how does it feel to be the less accomplished spouse? Must be hard on the ego, being Mr. Amal Clooney." The audience gasped. Even for Piers Morgan, this was a new low. Bringing someone's spouse into the conversation in such a nasty way crossed every line of professional behavior. You could see the exact moment when Clooney's patience finally ran out. His whole demeanor changed. The polite smile disappeared completely. "Excuse me?" Clooney said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "What did you just say about my wife?" Morgan must have realized he had gone too far because he tried to backtrack, but it was too little, too late. "I'm just saying that she's obviously the more successful one in your marriage. I mean, she's actually changing the world while you're just, acting." "Just acting?" Clooney repeated, and there was something in his voice that should have warned Morgan to stop talking immediately. "Let me get this straight. You brought my wife into this conversation to try and embarrass me? You think that's appropriate?" "I think it's an interesting dynamic," Morgan said, clearly trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "The pretty boy actor married to the serious lawyer. It's like a real-life romantic comedy, isn't it?" That was it. That was the moment when George Clooney decided he had heard enough. He leaned forward in his chair, and when he spoke, his voice was ice cold. "Piers, let me explain something to you. My wife is indeed brilliant. She's accomplished things that most people can only dream of. She's fought for justice in courts around the world. She's represented clients who desperately needed someone to believe in them, and she's made a real difference in people's lives. I'm incredibly proud of her, and I support her work completely. But if you think for 1 second that I'm going to sit here while you use her as a weapon to try and hurt me, you're out of your mind." The studio was dead silent. This wasn't banter anymore. This wasn't even an argument. This was one man defending his family against someone who had crossed a line that should never be crossed. Morgan seemed to realize that he had made a serious error in judgment, but instead of apologizing, he made things even worse. "Oh, come on, George, don't be so sensitive. I'm just having a bit of fun. Can't you take a joke?" "A joke?" Clooney's voice rose slightly. "You think insulting my wife is a joke? You think trying to diminish her accomplishments to score points against me is funny?" "I wasn't insulting her," Morgan protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "I was complimenting her. I said she was more accomplished than you are. By calling me Mr. Amal Clooney? By suggesting that my career doesn't matter because hers is more important? That's not a compliment, Piers. That's you trying to be clever at our expense." Morgan was clearly floundering now, searching for a way to regain control of the interview. But Clooney wasn't finished with him yet. "You know what the real joke is here, Piers? The real joke is that you think tearing other people down makes you look bigger. You think that if you can make me look small, somehow that makes you important. But all you're really showing everyone is what kind of person you are." "What kind of person I am?" Morgan shot back, his own anger finally showing. "I'm the kind of person who asks the questions that need to be asked. I'm the kind of person who doesn't get starstruck when some Hollywood pretty boy walks into my studio." "Pretty boy," Clooney repeated slowly. "You've used that phrase 3 times now in this interview. Is that supposed to bother me? Because I have to tell you, Piers, I've been called worse things by better people." The insult landed perfectly, and you could see Morgan's face turn even redder. He was losing this battle badly, and everyone in the studio knew it. But instead of gracefully accepting defeat, he decided to escalate things further. "Better people?" Morgan sputtered. "Better people? I've interviewed presidents, prime ministers, world leaders. I've broken major news stories. What have you done besides look good on camera?" "What have I done?" Clooney's voice was getting louder now, and you could hear the genuine anger creeping in. I've used my platform to bring attention to genocide in Sudan. I've helped fund satellite technology to monitor war crimes. I've worked with the Obama administration on policy regarding human rights, but more importantly, I've never had to tear someone else down to feel important. Morgan was clearly rattled, but he kept pushing. Oh, please, you helped with policy? You're an actor, George. You pretend to be other people for a living. What makes you think anyone should listen to you about anything serious? That question hung in the air like a challenge, and you could see Clooney weighing his response. This was his moment to either walk away or deliver the knockout punch. He chose the punch. You want to know what makes me qualified to speak about serious issues, Piers? The fact that I actually do the work. I don't just sit behind a desk and criticize people who are trying to make a difference. I get on planes, I go to places where people are suffering, and I try to help. And you know what? I don't do it for ratings or attention or to make myself feel superior. I do it because it's the right thing to do. The words hit Morgan like bullets, each one perfectly aimed and devastating in its impact. You could see him shrinking in his chair, realizing that he had picked a fight with the wrong person on the wrong night. But here's what really gets me, Piers. Clooney continued, his voice building to a crescendo. You sit there in judgment of everyone else, but what do you actually contribute? What do you do besides tear people down for entertainment? When was the last time you tried to make the world a better place instead of just making it more cynical? Morgan opened his mouth to respond, but Clooney wasn't done yet. The floodgates had opened, and years of frustration with tabloid journalism and gotcha interviews were pouring out. You want to know what I think is really going on here, Piers? I think you invited me on this show not because you wanted to have a conversation, but because you wanted to create a spectacle. You wanted to be the guy who took down George Clooney. You wanted viral clips and social media buzz. Well, congratulations. You got exactly what you wanted. The accusation was devastating because everyone watching knew it was probably true. Morgan's show had been struggling in the ratings, and a controversial interview with a major celebrity would definitely get people talking. But being called out so directly, so publicly, clearly wasn't part of his plan. That's completely ridiculous, Morgan stammered, but his voice lacked any conviction. I invited you here because you have a new film coming out. This is how interviews work, George. I ask questions, you answer them. Questions? Clooney laughed, but there was no humor in it. You call what you've been doing asking questions? Because from where I sit, it looks more like you've been throwing accusations around and hoping something sticks. You've insulted my career, my character, and my wife. What exactly did you think was going to happen here? Morgan was clearly panicking now. The interview had completely gotten away from him, and he was desperately trying to regain some control. Look, George, if you can't handle a tough interview, maybe you shouldn't be here. This is television, not a love fest. A tough interview? Clooney's voice was incredulous. Is that what you call this? Because I know what a tough interview looks like, Piers. A tough interview involves challenging questions about actual issues. It involves holding people accountable for their actions and their words. It doesn't involve personal attacks and cheap insults. I haven't made any personal attacks, Morgan protested weakly. No personal attacks? Clooney shot back immediately. You called me a pretty boy. You suggested my career peaked 20 years ago. You tried to use my wife as a weapon against me. If those aren't personal attacks, what are they? Morgan looked around the studio desperately, as if searching for help from his producers or crew. But nobody was coming to rescue him from this mess he had created. He was on his own, and it was clear he had no idea how to fix the situation. I think you're being overly sensitive, Morgan said, making one last desperate attempt to turn the tables. This is just how show business works. If you can't take the heat, don't you dare, Clooney interrupted, his voice sharp as a knife. Don't you dare try to make this about me being sensitive. This isn't about sensitivity. This is about basic human decency. This is about treating your guests with respect instead of trying to humiliate them for ratings. The word ratings hit Morgan like a physical blow. That was the heart of it, wasn't it? This whole ugly display was about ratings, about creating controversy, about generating buzz, and Clooney had called it out directly. You think I care about ratings? Morgan asked, but his voice was shaky now. I think you care about nothing else? Clooney replied immediately. I think you're so desperate for attention that you'll say anything, hurt anyone, cross any line just to get people talking about your show. The studio audience was completely silent, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. Nobody had expected a routine celebrity interview to turn into something this brutal, this personal. Morgan made one final attempt to salvage his dignity. "Well, if that's how you feel, maybe you should leave." It was meant to sound tough, like he was taking control of his own show, but it came across as exactly what it was. A desperate man who had lost a fight he had started and was now trying to pretend he wanted his opponent to go away. Clooney looked at him for a long moment, and you could see him considering his options. He could stay and continue this ugly confrontation, or he could leave and deny Morgan the spectacle he so clearly wanted. The choice was obvious. "You know what, Piers? I think that's exactly what I'm going to do." Clooney stood up from his chair, and the movement seemed to shock Morgan. Clearly, he hadn't expected his bluff to be called. "Wait, George, you don't have to." Morgan started, but Clooney cut him off. "Actually, I do have to. I have to leave because I have too much respect for myself and for your audience to continue participating in this circus. I came here to talk about my work, both in film and with my foundation. Instead, you've spent the last 15 minutes trying to tear me down for your own entertainment." Morgan was clearly panicking now. Having a major celebrity walk off his show would be humiliating, but trying to convince him to stay was equally embarrassing. He was trapped in a situation of his own making. "The audience came here to see you," Morgan said desperately. "Don't disappoint them because of some misunderstanding between us." "Misunderstanding?" Clooney repeated, his voice rising. "There's no misunderstanding here, Piers. You were deliberately cruel and disrespectful, and you got called out for it. That's not a misunderstanding. That's consequences." And with that, George Clooney began removing his microphone. The simple act of unclipping the small device and placing it on his chair was somehow more dramatic than any scripted moment could have been. It was the physical manifestation of a man who had decided he'd had enough. "This is ridiculous," Morgan said, but his voice was small now, defeated. "You're really going to walk off over this?" Clooney looked directly into the camera, speaking to the audience at home rather than to Morgan. "I want to apologize to anyone who tuned in tonight expecting to see an actual interview. You deserve better than this, and I'm sorry you had to witness it." Then he turned back to Morgan one final time. "And Piers, I hope you got what you wanted out of this. I hope the ratings were worth it, because this is exactly the kind of television that's making the world a worse place, one nasty interview at a time." The words hung in the air like a final judgment. Morgan sat there, speechless, as George Clooney walked calmly toward the exit. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or sit in stunned silence. They chose silence. Just before reaching the edge of the stage, Clooney stopped and turned around one more time. "Oh, and Piers, next time you want to interview someone, try remembering that they're a human being, not a prop for your ego." And then he was gone, leaving Piers Morgan sitting alone in his studio, facing an audience that had just watched him get completely dismantled by one of Hollywood's most respected figures. The camera lingered on Morgan's face for what felt like an eternity, capturing every moment of his humiliation. In 37 seconds, Piers Morgan had destroyed his own credibility. In 15 minutes, George Clooney had shown the world what dignity looked like. And in that final moment, walking off that stage, he had delivered the most devastating blow of all. He had made it clear that some battles simply aren't worth fighting, and some people aren't worth your time. The interview that was supposed to boost Morgan's ratings instead became a masterclass in how quickly things can go wrong when arrogance meets integrity. It was a reminder that respect is earned, not demanded, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away.